Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone, members of staff and council. We will call this meeting to order, and I will turn it over to Councillor DeLeo for our land acknowledgement. Please, Councillor DeLeo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that the town of Wasaga Beach is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Tionontadi, Wendat, and is the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of an intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships and ask for guidance in all we do.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We'll move on to item number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interests. I have none before me at this time. If there's anyone who feels throughout the meeting they have a pecuniary interest, please let us know at that time. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. I do have a motion resolved that contents of the agenda of March 16th, 2023, 9 a.m. a meeting be approved as circulated. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Timms, Deputy Mayor Snell, all in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 4, deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. We do have a presentation this morning under 4.1, Idea Studio, Mr. Bruce St. Clair, Legal Brand, Logo Brand Exploration. I ask you to come forward, please, Bruce. Turn your mic on. Welcome. Happy to have you.
Good morning. Does everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Your Worship, distinguished council members, Wasaga Beach staff, my name is Bruce Sinclair, and I'm honored to speak with you today. The subject of the discussion is the Wasaga Beach brand. I've been told I have about 15 minutes to speak, and I've got about 18 slides, so I'm going to move pretty quickly. But and if you want to hold your questions to the end, I'm told that we'll have a chance to actually have an open discussion, and I would encourage that. So, myself personally, I've got about 30 years experience in advertising and design. In my career, I've led the creative for all of Ford Canada. I've touched many global brands, and since 2012, I've been running Idea Studio, which is a social good agency. We pretty much dedicate ourselves to humanitarian, environmental, health and safety causes and community initiatives. We just launched a campaign for the United Nations last week, actually, which was for the International Women's Day. So I would encourage you to, I don't really have the time to go in and do a whole history of Idea Studio, nor would you probably have the patience to listen to it, but you can find out more at ideastudio.ca, and I would encourage you to do that. I've been coming to Wasaga Beach since the 70s. It's deep in my heart, actually, and we've had family here since the 90s, actually. And for the last few years, my wife and I call Wasaga Beach home now. And I run Idea Studio from Wasaga Beach. So I'm very, deeply concerned about the future of our town and the brand. And I know that I wasn't asked to do this work. I've been watching closely for the last year or so, and when I started to see the articulation of the new brand, the first thing I thought was, oh geez, I wish I'd known that that was happening. I wish I could have put forward Idea Studio into the process, but for some reason it didn't cross my radar. Wasaga Beach is one of the greatest places to live. I think the work-life balance that so many people are looking for just seems to come naturally here, and that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. The whole point of being here today is to really just to demonstrate to you folks what could be with a brand. I think so often, the discipline of good branding is very hard. I think it's really easy to make a list of all the things that you want your brand to be. And what happens is everyone contributes to that list, and you've got a massive committee, and you're trying to make a decision, and you're trying to balance everyone's opinions, and you're never going to get everyone on board. It just doesn't work that way. But in my experience, it's harder, but it's better to try and figure out what not to say. We're so focused on making a list of all the things we want. The logo has to have this, and it has to have that. And I think when I look at this process, one of the things that I've come to realize, and if you look at the slide that we're looking at on the screen right now, this really is telling when you look at the screen. You know, I should say, I don't mean any offense to any of the previous work that's been done. I think best intentions, you know, we're obviously there, but the fact of the matter is, the screen sort of speaks to itself. You know, if you take a good hard look at it, and then realize that every single one of these logos is actually currently in use in one way or the other. And, you know, it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. There is an opportunity to bring harmony to all of this, and it's complicated, but I think if we look deeper at what the brand really is and the meaning behind it, we can find that harmony. Now, I know that we're just at the tail end of a branding journey that the town has been on for a year. And, you know, I was encouraged when I listened to one of the council meetings previously where you were discussing the ideas of what to do with the library branding. And I was starting to hear some of the council members and the mayor himself talk about what was working and what was not working with the brand identity. Hopefully, you'll start to see some ideas and themes in this presentation that might work to address some of those concerns. Excuse me. Here's an interesting case study. There's a few to look at here. And I know I'm bringing this forward because these brands found new life by getting back to their roots. I think most of us would be pretty familiar with these brands. Somewhere along the way, they tried something new. And, you know, over time, I think people realize that when you step away from what you actually have, it's almost like you've debranded in a way. You've lost some of the heart and soul of what it is. I've put these under the category of modern vintage. There's something new and there's something old at the same time, and it's been refreshed and it's been modernized, but it's looked at through a lens of what used to be. You know, there's times when design should and can be a revolution, but most of the time good design is an evolution. And I think that there's something to be learned by these cases in the context of the brand of Wasaga Beach. So if you look closely at this page, what you'll see is, in my opinion, in the opinion of my team, the equity that is the most substantial with the town right now is the logo on the top that you can see there. I think when we squint our eyes and we think about what Wasaga Beach is and we see that brand in our mind, this has been there for quite some time. And there is quite a considerable amount of equity in this brand. However, I can understand why a year ago, council would have decided we need to refresh this brand. If you look closely at it, you know, the typography is dated, the colors are dull, you know, some of the elements of the design seem almost like clip art a little bit. And like I said, I don't mean to offend any work that's been done over the past. I think there's some very, very great things about this logo. And one of the things I love about it the most is that I think it helps people pronounce the word Wasaga, because it actually puts the emphasis on that A, and it's balanced and it comes together. We saw the opportunity to not abandon the equity that Wasaga Beach has, but to revitalize it, to simplify it, modernize it. So the logo on the bottom there is an evolution, which basically takes the type, completely re-engineers the typography, creates a new icon at the heart and soul, which you'll see in further pages here how that could work across multi, facets of Wasaga Beach branding, including different departments and divisions. But the A itself and the sunburst and the shoreline becomes the center point. If we look at the next page, you can see how that can be adapted and used in small, big, inverted. Now this is really key. I think the town crest, I know, has been a challenge to the town for quite some time. It's been there since '74. I think the original version of it actually had a green trim to it. And this is a tough one to refresh this, and we looked at many different ways of doing it. Unfortunately, if you highlight the activities, you are running the risk of dating yourself again at some point. And so it didn't feel like that was the appropriate way, but also in the effort to try and create harmony, how are we going to do that? How are we going to connect the town crest to the logo and the other marks that are required? Is there some different variations of that? Here's a perfect example. So we have the tourism brand, which was done by Kandari in 2019. And, I have no criticism of this logo. I think it's very well done. The issue with it is that it, on its own, seems isolated from everything else. And so with a little bit of tweaking, the work can work across. The color and the theme and the playfulness can be seen right across all the branding. And the color palette itself extends directly from the placemaking sign on the beach. So we tried to work with what's already there to try and create harmony. You can see a few different versions of this as well. It works as a key line, it works vertically, and we've also and it also works on its own. The word Wasaga, in my opinion, as this town starts to grow, it doesn't always need the name beach. There are some times, I think, where it might, but it can actually grow to just be Wasaga. And that might take some time. That could be an evolution. But we actually think that there is some merit in that. We also we explored a lot of different taglines. We landed on more to explore. I think we're so focused on saying all the things that Wasaga is beyond a magnificent beach that's the longest beach in the world. So we kind of rush to talk about the other things, and I think that comes, sometimes at the expense of sharing what is really core, which is we have the longest beach in the world, and it is beautiful, and that is at the heart of who we are. But there is more to explore, and you'll see actually how how we envision that coming to life in some of our advertising ideas. So here's a great idea for an ad. The thought here is to always come back to the beach and to talk about the beach, but to do it in a way that actually shows that there's more to explore here. So just another day at the beach. It's kind of a play on things. It's not a visual you would be expecting. Some people believe Wasaga Beach became one of the fastest growing communities in Canada solely for our magnificent shoreline. For those that live and work here, the beach is just the beginning. WasagaBeach.com. So there's a bit of new thinking here and a bit of who we've always been. And we believe that it's actually got some merit, but it's just really a first stab at what a branding campaign could actually look like for the town. And here's a horizontal treatment that actually, again, feels like it's directly connected to all of the previous work I've just shown you, because it uses that same icon and typography. But in this case, it's actually, what I like about this one is it almost emphasizes how long the actual beach is in the word mark and the tagline itself. And this is how this particular mark could be used for all the different divisions and departments. Here's an example for municipal law enforcement. Here's an example for the fire department. All of these, we don't need to design a whole different logo every time we have a different division. We can pull from the same visual language and have some consistency, but also have, the ability to, bring some life into it and to show different things. So Wasaga Beach Public Library, one of the things we noted was that the bookmobile is due to be redesigned. Well, here's an idea of what the bookmobile could be. And we're all we're all fans of the piping plover, and it just occurred to us actually that the plover could be a mascot to the library, something that would be fun with the bookmobile. But again, these are just brush strokes to show what can be. And last but not least, here's an idea of how the brand could be articulated in merchandising, which I think is a huge opportunity for the town. One that, if it's done well, could actually bring a source of donation and revenue back to the town that could be used to help whatever cause that we deem that it should be for. So that's it. That's some brush strokes for what the brand could be. And I would like to open it up to questions.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and we appreciate your presentation, a great presentation. I think I'll start quickly by saying I think this is the first time in my life I've ever fallen in love with a plover. So I do like the plover. Questions or comments from council? Councillor White?
Certainly wasn't going to go first, Alan. I thought you would go first. Okay. Hey, first off, thank you very much for coming in here today. And this unsolicited work that you've done was a bit of a risk and a big step, so I appreciate you taking it as well. Like you, I am not very happy with the existing 19 or 20 or 6 or 5, whatever logos that we currently have in use, so I'm happy to see this going on. That said, I'm not happy about spending any more money on this. I feel like because we have 6 logos that we've spent 6 amounts of money trying to get it done. But the current logo isn't well received, and that's a truth that we just have to accept. The W3 with the all in, just it's not connecting with people, and we do receive quite a bit of communication about that. My favorite one here is the one that's on the screen now. The way that you've done the logo, the one that's represented on page 13, with the colorful, I think it reflects our old logo, the one that you're refreshing, as well as what's going on with that beautiful sign down at the beachfront. There's only one question I have with regards to the layout, and it's here with the badge and how you've taken the sunset, I guess that is, starburst, sunset, fireworks. It could be a lot of things, which is great because they all apply. But when you make the crest, you move it into the W here. And for me, that's just a little bit of taking away from the branding a bit. So if you wanted to talk about that a little bit, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But that was the only critical part I had about it. Otherwise, I actually like it quite a bit.
Thank you, Councillor. Bruce?
Thank you, Councillor White. Just to address that, the thought behind what is the sunset, what's also a sunburst, a star. It's actually reminiscent of the maple leaf itself. If you look closely at it, it's got the same amount of points that are facing upward as the maple leaf does. It's meant to be a lot of things, but it's meant to be, on its, how many times have we all enjoyed those beautiful epic sunsets in Wasaga? It's amazing to see what happens in the sky at that time, at that magic hour. And what we're trying to show here is the light coming through from behind the A or the W. And what it does is it creates the negative space that would be part of the W or the A, but it bursts the light coming through. And to connect an icon, like when we look at that crest in its circle with the words around it, the town of Wasaga Beach, Simcoe County, Georgian Bay, that's a seal that can be stamped on. It should be hanging in this wall. It should be on invoices from the town, that kind of thing. But the W itself as an icon is also very powerful. It looks great on a hat. It's something that I can see people getting behind. It's almost like Nike's swoosh to what the town, it's something we need. It's something that can be easily put on articles and shared with people. It also looks really good in social media when you have zero space to work with and it's just a small little icon. It's very striking and it pops in that environment as well. But it's the simplest way to connect all the brands together. I agree with you on the playfulness of the tourism brand, but I don't necessarily think that colorful brand should take over and now be the one logo we use. What I've tried to do more than anything is to give you guys a whole visual language to play with here. And I think that's, in all due respect to anyone else that stood in this podium, I think that's where they've missed the boat, actually, is they've come to you with one solution for one aspect instead of looking at the whole thing holistically.
Thank you, Bruce. Good, Councillor. Councillor Belanger, and then Councillor Ego.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will tell you, on the original exercise, council was split on the selection of a logo. I agree with Councillor White. I personally don't connect with the all-in, and to the W, like immediately when I see the W, I think of water, I think of woods, I think of Wonderland. You know, so I think there's some plays, like, I mean, this is in the early stages, but I totally agree that we have equity in the brand, and what we chose was a huge departure from what we had, and the simplification. I know the mayor has some fond memories about the original logo and the activities that are displayed on it. I find it a little busy, you know, from when it goes by, you don't really connect with all those things. So I kind of like the simplification, and you know, I think everyone knows is we not only do we have the longest freshwater beach in the world, but we have the best sunsets in the world too. So I personally I like it. Thank you.
Councillor Ego.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say it was fabulous to have a great presentation and a local person who's as passionate about this beach and knows it as well as we seem to feel. So it definitely came from knowing the beach, so I appreciate that. Now, I'm not just jumping on your bandwagon about the W standing alone, because that was in my note before I spoke. I think it has great merit down the line. I agree, people may not get it right away, but I did compare it to the Nike swoosh, which I think is so well known, and I thought one day that W does stand alone, so I'm strong on that one, actually. You said what not to say, so there's been a tagline. Now I love, you know, the W in that logo where you showed the beach is just the beginning, back at the beginning. I dislike that tagline so strong. That's all I ever focused on, because me personally, at the time, I thought, it is everything. How can you not say? So it irritated me, so I had to put that one in there because, yeah, I think we are the beach. So and I got that linear, the world's longest freshwater beach, you could see that. So I think it's a great job, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Your Worship. I must say, Bruce, that having you actually present this document this morning has warmed me up quite a bit to it. It's always so hard to take things out of context, and that was what happened with so many people when the former council launched the last brand with the tagline, all in, that people found confusing and such a big departure that there was quite an outcry, as you know, which I guess inspired you to do this for us. I do want to mention, because I worked at the town at the time that the former council approved the tourism brand, that at that point they were using the crest as the logo for council. And you're right, 1974, I have a mug here from 1974. It really needed a refresh. I did have some phone calls from folks that were concerned about cost of more spending in light of the budget coming up with a large increase. But I did have a conversation with our deputy CAO and told me the money is found within our budget. And I don't know whether, Jerry, you can speak to that or not. Something that always worries me is the fact that we've been funded time and again to create these new brands, and then we spend the money and then move on to something else. And that happened with the tourism brand. There was no money to launch it, so it kind of just fizzled and showed up in a few places. So those are my concerns. I'm also on the library board, so I'm concerned that the library board might not want to switch immediately over to a new brand after spending the money and then taking council's thoughts and tweaking their brand after they presented it to us, hoping that it would be more in liking to council and town. So those are just my thoughts. Beautiful presentation, and you know, I really think this will go a long way for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the table. Thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. You're right in my bailiwick. I'm all about branding and marketing and clear communication. And you know, I think something that's really important to think about is that, you know, branding is part of telling our story. And we have fumbled that ball for decades now. And I think it's grossly impacted community pride, clarity, and most importantly, impacted our only economy, which is tourism. So I'm really supportive of getting a more unified approach and to not have this haphazard of several logos all over the place. It just seems like we're multiple personalities, and we need to sort of bring that into one vision. I agree, Councillor Timms, in regards to the concern of spending money. Previous council in launching this new brand, you obviously spent a lot of money, invested a lot in communicating that vision. But at the same time, I think we're still at a very important impasse. We have our Twin Pad Arena and Library that is going to be launching. We are investing significant dollars in a pylon sign and signage throughout that facility, and also to marry in the branding of the library. And I, you know, we were all part of that conversation when that library brand came forward. And I think there was a lot of confusion and concern in regards to how does it fit with what we're doing, like we're putting cart before horse. And I feel that, you know, as the parent, as a corporation, you need to have your brand first, and then all of the children fit under the vision of the parent, and we're doing things in opposite ways. So I really like this, and I really appreciated too how you wove in the pieces of the wayfinding sign, because I think that was one brand that came out really well. I really like the wayfinding sign. I love the playfulness of the placing sign down at the beach. You see how many people are embracing it, taking photos with it, sharing it socially. So that one's been really well received. And overall, I'm very impressed with the presentation, and I thank you for taking the time to bring it to us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Councillor DeLeo.
Thank you, Bruce, for that wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it. I have to admit also, me too, I prefer the colored logo. I'm all about visual, so no matter which town I go or wherever I am, if I see a sign, if I can't recognize it or read it immediately, I lose interest. Because even if you're driving, you have a split second to see what it's all about. But the colored one, as soon as you brought it up on the screen, I felt happy. It cheered me up. Like, it's fun. You know, it just put a smile. It's like, it gave me this warmth. And I think that's perfect. As for the crest, I like the crest, like a lot, over the old one. The old one I did not like at all. Having just the letter, though, W, I personally don't like that. Only being is that people that don't know Wasaga, just seeing a W, they don't know what it is. So unless the name Wasaga Beach is with it, they can identify it. So, like for instance, the Nike logo, I'm sure that took many, many years to get to that and people recognize it. I don't think Wasaga's there yet. Hopefully when it is, then we can transition to that. But other than that, your presentation, like, hands down, one of the best that I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeLeo. Any other comments? Seeing none. Bruce, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it was an excellent presentation, and it brings me joy to know that there are residents in our community that care enough about our community that this was an important thing for you to come forward on, and we appreciate that. You know, I understand the concern at this table, because I have it as well, about people thinking, you know, how many times are we going to spend money in order to rebrand? And the answer that I would give anybody is, until we get it right. Wasaga Beach is who we are. It is our identity. And we have a beautiful community with the longest freshwater beach in the world, and obviously the most beautiful plovers you've ever seen, and smart ones at that. And so it's important that we make sure that anybody who looks at our logo understands immediately who it is and what it is. And we've seen many, many corporations throughout our lifetime that have spent billions of dollars on logos in order to make sure that they get it right. The good news is that this logo comes to us from a citizen who is more than prepared, as I understand, to work with the town to give us something that is recognizable and at a very reasonable cost. And I think as we move forward with this logo, should that be the choice of this council, that we will have got it right. And so, you know, I'll talk about the existing logo, but before I do, I just want to touch on Councillor Belanger's comments of the original logo that is near and dear to my heart. It absolutely is. I was born and raised here. It was the first logo of this town. That logo was the brainchild of residents who have been here for many years, including our very first mayor, Claire Robertson, who I respect greatly. That crest was put to a patch and given to every child in every school. And to this day, I have that crest in my top right-hand drawer, and I often look at it. So it is near and dear to my heart. It is important, but I do understand it is busy, and back then, that was what it was. And I understand that back then, it really showed what Wasaga Beach was sailing and swimming and snowmobiling and so on. But times change. And like I've said many, many times, there's two things we all hate: change in the way things are. But what we know is that if we don't change, we die. It's that simple. The current logo, I call it W3, because without Wasaga Beach written with it, I truly have no idea what it is. And I hear and have heard that from many, many citizens in this community. And the phrase, all in, I can't tell you how many of our citizens believe that that was created by the casino, and that it was all about the casino. Now, I have no idea, don't know, and quite frankly, don't care. But when I see it, I have no idea what it means, all in. I just don't. When I look at this logo and I see a Wasaga, and it's colorful and it's bright and it's fun and it's playful, and I see our shoreline and the sunset, it is very clear to me that that's Wasaga Beach. And so I fully support what I see here. I think that we can make some minor adjustments. I would agree with Councillor White on the patch. Until this logo is so well-known, like the Nike swoosh, and I have no doubt in my mind that when we complete what we're going to do and revamp this community, that we will get there. But perhaps we should have Wasaga even in fine, small letters, so as that there is no confusion. But other than that, that small critical point for me, I think that it's absolutely phenomenal. So again, thank you, Bruce, for caring about our community. Thank you for your presentation. We truly appreciate it.
You're all very welcome. Thank you for that feedback. It makes me happy to hear what you guys have to say, because this has been a long road for us that we decided to choose to go down in October, and had really no idea that of how it would be received, just knowing that it was the right thing to do, actually. So I think it's great, and I look forward to working with you guys. We didn't come here to make money, and I'm trying to work with the town as best as I can. I feel like I'm as much responsible to the citizens of this town as I am to you guys. I don't want to look at my neighbor and have them think that this was an opportunistic, cash grab. We're trying to do something that we feel is right, and there are some costs that we can't get away from. But I appreciate your words on that, Your Worship, because I think whether or not you want to go down the road again or not, I feel like you're in the boat already, and we're here to help steer you in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Before we let Bruce go, any questions or comments from staff? Jerry?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Sitting into the past council meetings and getting feedback as well from staff and from residents and from council members at the table, you certainly could see the existing brand, the W3, and the all-in was problematic. And when Mr. Sinclair presented to staff, and I was like Councillor Timms, I went through the deck and thought, okay. And then when it got articulated by Mr. Sinclair and how it could unfold and how they can connect the dots, I thought that it was an opportunity that we need to get in front of council. I think it's an economical way to launch into the right direction. I think it's feedback from council here today tells us from a staff perspective, our spidey sense, if you will, was bang on. So I too thank Bruce for his work.
Thank you. Any other staff members? Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question, but, where do we go next steps, given this information? I think it was important, Bruce indicated that it's not just what you say, it's what you don't say. It's also true of what you do and what you don't do, and I'm sensing that this council may not want to spend any additional funds on the current logo, and some expenditures are in process. So I'd like to, I don't know if we refer that back to staff or what we need to do to take the next steps. I think there's going to be opportunity, in the near future when we, have something important to tell our community about future development, that a relaunch at a not so distant future of the brand might be appropriate, and that could be in the next fiscal year if we know that the budget is a challenge this year. But I would like us to have some kind of understanding as to what we're going to do with the current logo and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Deputy CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Belanger, the all-in cost for the exercise to date, I know the staff report showed 70,000, but there was a double counting of some decals in there. So the actual price I checked with our treasurer this morning was $66,256. Of that amount, $16,256 came from municipal taxes. So, and that includes all the decals that we bought to date. So that's what you see in front of you, Councillor Belanger, is the total investment by the town at this point in time. How we move forward is the Economic Development Reserve. We can leverage that to fund this change. Staff gets the direction from council to proceed. We'll work with Mr. Sinclair on next steps and presentations to be brought forward. And if council also gives us direction, we'll work with Mr. Sinclair on a licensing agreement on the merchandising aspect.
All right, thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Councillor? All right. Thank you very much, Bruce. Moving on, I do have a resolution here today that council directs staff to execute an agreement with Idea Studio under the following financial terms. Transfer the ownership of all Idea Studio Wasaga Beach branding material, logos, taglines, and concepts to the town of Wasaga Beach for $15,000 plus unrecoverable HST of $264, and that council directs staff to establish the parameters of a retail licensing agreement with Idea Studio and to report back to council with potential licensing agreement conditions for council's consideration. Questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor White and Deputy Mayor Snell, all in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 5 of the agenda, bylaws. We do have a bylaw under 5.1, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a letter of agreement between His Majesty the King in Right of Ontario, represented by the Ministry of Transportation, Province of Ontario, the Town of Wasaga Beach, and resolve that a bylaw to authorize the execution of a letter of agreement between His Majesty the King of of the Province of Ontario, represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario and the Town of Wasaga Beach for funding provided under a dedicated gas tax fund for the public transportation program be received and to be deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered number 2023-36. Questions or comments on this? Seeing none, a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor DeLeo, seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? That carries unanimously. The next bylaw on the agenda is a bylaw to deem parts of a registered plan. Resolved that a bylaw to deem parts of a registered plan 835 in the town of Wasaga Beach not to be a registered plan of subdivision lot 22 and lots 23, 24, and part lot 25 on plan 835 be received and to be deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered number 2023-37. Questions or comments? Seeing none, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor White and Councillor Belanger, all in favor? That motion also carries unanimously. And our last item, number 6, confirmatory bylaw, is resolved that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Wasaga Beach at a special meeting held Thursday, March 16th, 2023 at 9 a.m. be received and to be deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered 2023-38. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ego and Councillor White, all in favor? That carries unanimously. And this meeting is adjourned. We will take 15 minutes, come back at 10 o'clock for our regular council meeting. Thank you.